当初级全能老强就保度当年节。来回去因节所能节着老本节上学上节去当初级全能老强就保度当年节。他能节着老本节上节主保学上节去当初级全能老强就保度当年。大概接近节所能节着老本节上节主保是我老当了没当没有金融部的解决了说确定了小我确保了三节送报的对新进的被拒绝大众节特别轻易这个解决的这所谓的就把这些解保的老छोटो才结果我也对那边你解决是下面我们当年来把多老推双年节那么那一个的路上的这个主的他们也跟了这根据这样其实把他们这个都大概去真多哦要是他这样呢大概就这都trang备多几个人了哦大起下我对起身俺去年到我的去玩人对起碰碰地动的地了什么叫人嘛其他人了错了了但那新的觉吧的其实碰碰那的那工作什么叫写巧哦前年我打算我拿些钱呢，对他们出这的多个出这的，可能送过来是呢，大家瞧我对起心，这个，俺呢当人的，俺呢对起心不点吧，大家瞧我对起心，今年到了去玩人是这个，俺呢让个心，俺呢当真去想要对去玩的，当真去想往对去玩，yeah.
So there's a verse that's cited by the Master Chandrakirti in his auto commentary to his introduction to the Middle Way. And in that it says that that this self is the mind of the demon or the devil, Mara. And so what is that's referring to here is the mind which is the misapprehension of the self. And that is given the name here, the mind of Mara or the devil.
Oh yeah, Anita, do you pump on the on the say diggy? I never cut it as an pump on Shinji True, Danzingi, Sungaki, Anne Suyura Shinji True Tama. Do you pump on the on this? Anne. tell us some you're my yin, say a pump chop a lie, chop it into honest some jam meba, some you're my yin, say, Jidan, some good to you by the pumbo, right? Pumbo, I ran you to a daughter, down a yin, I need dash chop them into, I need you by the damn by in town, until good to you by damn by it.
So then this ignorance, which is the misapprehension of the self, which is given the name here of the mind of Mara, it observes the aggregates, the collection of the aggregates, which are all mostly created things that are produced through causes and conditions. And it forms the conception that this within that there's an I or a person which exists by means of its own intrinsic nature, and then so being attached to that, then it involves us in all of the other forms of mental affliction and so forth. But here it says that in the verse that within that collection of the aggregates, there's no intrinsically existent person to be found in any way whatsoever. When one looks for that kind of intrinsically existent I, it's not findable within its basis of designation, which is the collection of the aggregates.
Oh, Tiggy, I need a pumbo chotam latena, Kansato Tabata Mado, I need Kansara Wanki Meba, Pumbo chotam latena, Kansa Miki Tabatam to Yeba. I need some Jacundo to Yeba Tembache. Tiggy Bella, I need Chitayana, Chonam latena, Shinda Jabatar, said, oh. That tell you to Omati, be Omati the Jenny Shagur. Yellow Chobala, Yellow Chobala, Dana, and a Shinda Chenny, and a Tabana Shinsi. Tishi Pumbo Nam Dene, Gundo some Jeshao, Pumbo Chobala, Dene, and if or the 심전시 아니 가르소를 다교화를
So then the way that this works is that there is an actual self which is nominally existent, and which exists in dependence upon being by being designated upon its basis of designation. But this Mara mind exaggerates the existence of that and misapprehends it as if it was intrinsically existent. So then it out of that misapprehension, then is where the other mental afflictions and so forth arise. So that self or I, which actually exists, is a phenomenally existing thing. But when it's misapprehended as being real, then that aspect of it, which is the fictitious object, which is misapprehended by the misconception that there's a real self or I, it's erroneous in that respect. So the example that is given for the way this works is that a collection of parts, when they're configured in the right way, serve as the suitable designation for a cart. And so we apply the name cart to a thing which is the collection of the parts that make up the basis of designation of that term or thought, cart. And so we identify that thing as a cart, and phenomenally it's a cart. There's no, it's impossible to deny that. But when we superimpose a sort of exaggerated mode of existence or intrinsic existence onto that, then there's confusion arises.
Oh yeah. 되게 안에 강사 풍부를 때내 다바 인장 안에 풍부 초바자 가야 아니 강사 많이 봐 풍부를 때내 다바 인장 안에 풍부 초바장 강사 많이 봐 너래 풍부 때내 인순 봐 대지 풍부 뒤에서 당 많이 전에 오마드비나나 순반내 신이 전에 풍부를 때내 다바 인장 풍부 다그 다시 인장 아니
So now we have to distinguish them between the basis of designation and the thing which is designated. The I or the self or the person is designated upon that basis of designation. But the two things are distinct in that the basis of designation is not that which is designated upon it, the I or the self or the person. So here we have to make that distinction that the I or self or person is the designated, the identity which is designated to upon that basis of designation, but that sort of identity or the self or the I or person is not the basis of designation. They have a mutually dependent relationship, but they're not identical.
그전에 잠세당 가서 그전에 제가 풍봉하고 제가 코난을 따오 세대 풍봉하고 제가 코난을 세대게 가르쳐 거를 풍보를 때는 따와서 코나 시에게 아 풍보를 몇 번 빠지게요 알고. 그와 대인선다 도나 가서래 풍보 초바당 아니 초바자 가양 가사 마이장 다시 풍보 초비 띵도 아니 가소리 낭점지라 아니 가소리 가사시 줘야 이 말이야. 멜론나게 최신도 수년기 땡도 가서 최신 멜론나게 나도 수년 나와 나시체니 낭점지라 아니다 가사시 다시 폼비 땡도 아니 낭점지라 가사 아니 가사서에 쉬어야 임바리 뒤라 가사 되나라 되나시 전에 지보 란데기 나라서나 신체 가사 되서가 라나 남자 마도발 텔라라서 중 텔라 중세 예메따르세 다시 풍비진도 아니 가사세 가서레 낭점지 마도 낭점 되기만도 오다 텔레신 다시 풍비진도에 다시 분비든도 다바점도 레판 다바점도 낭점 주기는 게 아니 자와 지의 인상 라나로라 남자 라나 남자 마도바 텔레라서 중 텔레로서 중세 유메달 시비자와 저번에 소녀유바 심지어 친이라랑 소소이 또바점 또배 팔 다니 낭점들라 언니다 저국에 순순하래 마도바 예비 가짜 참은 마기나 지점제장 이제 따와래就是파바 매바 다고 쿰 스타카산 티발치니 봐 No. No. Kanchazo.
That's manda kina. That's manda.
Kaltane koaleso.
Die kra taxi pombola.
Dashi pombola tene tab.
No.
Dole pombo tene ta tene insumba se dotigi gejonda tamseta 풍봉어 오태당 대만이 풍봉어 오태다 코나라 따오세 풍보라 따오세디 아니 풍보라 때네 따위 알아 따위대.
So here then there's a sutra which says that when we see a monk or an ascetic, that what we're looking at what we're looking at is the aggregates. Now that statement there has to be taken in a certain way of interpretation, such that the aggregates, which are the collection of the aggregates, are the basis upon which one designates a person or a self or an I. And so the aggregates as the collection as the basis of designation are not identical with the I, which is or self or person, which is designated upon them. Whether one's talking about oneself or other persons, it doesn't matter. It's the same process of designation based upon that kind of collection of the aggregates, where when one sees someone else, one thinks that's a person. What one is observing is the collection of their aggregates. And then based upon that observation of the collection, then one designates upon that the identity of I or self or person. Same thing with oneself. And here then one has to be very, very cautious in that one doesn't want to eliminate the distinction between that which is designated, which is the I or self or person, and its basis of designation, the collection of the aggregates.
안에 강사대 간절시 요아래서 요아래서 안에 강사 심바 민장 다시 초비된도 다점 민장 민기파 샤바장기 아니 로 가서 낭점지 로라 낭점지 되기 멜론라 최신 나와 나신 전에 멜론나 그 최신 그 소녀데 안에 최신의 태발라 때나 낭점지 마도 안에랑 원에 준세자 매번 나신 전에 어떤 낭점 되라 아니 다 다시 초비된도 민장점도 낭점지 얘기 아니 가서래 가사게 저와치니 쇼고야 되다 던데 대로 라나 로라 낭점 마도바 텔라로스 준세 유메다르 대단 지바 인사를 누가 쇼장한테 가상이 뒤나라 구주 코숨되기 어디 도와
구주 코숨고 은강
도와
90 this is on 93 of the at the beginning of page 93 of the
됐어
이제 고승기 고 계륵 노선 가주라
근데 노선 가주 어디 밀람 수단 뒤에 따라는 강 밀람 그 나와서야 돼 밀람 생각이 이게 내가서 나간담당 밀람 그 수디야 밀람 그 내가서 나장 뒤에 따라는 대양 주마 대신도 나위 아니 시바 충고 나간담라 쇼바 텐나신 아니 치다는 공업을 강 나왔다 로라 나간담 마도바 텔로스 준세지요 말이
So here then, what is being said is that the fact that when we observe the I or the self, we do so in relationship to its basis of designation, that is, the designated identity or the I, the self, person. Whether we're speaking of oneself or other persons, it doesn't matter. We do that with respect to the aggregates, the collection of the aggregates, which is the basis for making that designation, ascribing that convention or identity to what is observed. And here then, so when that appears to us, it appears as if it was findable within the basis of designation, as if it existed within the basis of designation as such, by means of its own sort of autonomous character or intrinsic existence. However, that's not the case, and so therefore one can understand that what it is actually is a mere name. The I or the self or the person is a mere name, and that mere name appears to us. It appears as if it's arising from the aggregates, but actually it's not coming out of the aggregates themselves. Rather, we mentally construct it and we ascribe it to that basis of designation, which is properly and conventionally properly designated by that kind of identity or name. So here then, the example that's given is like the reflection of a face in a mirror. When the conditions are right, when there's a mirror and a face is in front of it, then there's the reflection of that face in the mirror. But that reflection is not an actual face. It looks like it's an actual face. If one is in error about one sees it as if it was a real face, then when it appears like a real face, but actually it's devoid of being a real face. So this the way in which these identities or the designations that we ascribe to things actually exist are similar to the way that reflection appears in the mirror, and that they appear to us as if they were out there in the thing that is from which that appearance is arising. But in fact, this is just something that we're ascribing to the thing that's identified in that way, without it existing within its basis of designation or the locus where it's appearing. It doesn't exist in that way whatsoever.
Oh yeah. That 가서래 대단 제 가서래 다시 등도 안에 따와나 다시 풍부 소비등도 따와나 풍부래래와 풍부 쳐봐 강야 안에 가사기 아니 sen심해 봐도 다들 송고아래 다들 가사기 되어왔지만 대다 따와나 기범 강사감 안가우 냠바기 로라 나와다지 기우소 연나스 덴바여발에 예메바 이나스 예메바 이나스 다로와 대다 나와지 기우여바 마인데 스타 홍아란조라 아니 소소 기우라 나와 따르지 기우도 연나 애니 덴바여발에 예메바 이나스 아란조라 난조 데라 아니 라신지 주에 난조 마도 아니 매와 인상 대단 나와지 기우여바 마인데 생아란조라 나와다지 기우디 요 말에 다들 가르서나 소바당 아라완도 주바 지난 그 어와 여바 마인데 기위 리스미레레왕 기우 마인 다다 풍봉하라 자와 나시 리스미레레왕 기우 리양 기우 마인 아세명 기우 마인 아니 리스미 소바양 기우 마인 개나네 가서래 교사님이 주면 몇몇을 대화를 통도 가서 교 많이 come true 현도양 아니 상금 총관 명관 농감 나게 감남시 감데 come true 현도양 교에 봐 많이 시 다지 팀이 가라 손에들이 와 교발라나메 봐 공부르지 교사님이 주마이 몇몇 루미 나가미 남시 많이 끼면은 텔레션에 지고 강 다시티 되니 카메라에 되네야 아니 요요 말에 컴퓨터 소비 되네야 요요 말에 오늘 다 가요래 세간세 아니 간요와래 산다 대가 다바점도 요거야 다 대당 총바 단다 준주기 마 송기도 다 대지바인 말에 진주를 소야 되라. 대단 좀 진주来讲 소단 자센다 마이. 아니 다니 소단 자센다 마이. 다니 리와 참마이. 자, 다 남이 바가양 안에 다 마이. 최세단에 나자 마이. 다니 사당 우민데 로젠 다자 다 마이. 난로 다자 다 민데 다니 치마 치사 징마이. 최당 롱양 다 마이. 어디 가라다 수 최당 롱양 다 메기나다 감주라 마제 가라. 최당 롱양 다 마이. 나가래 되디 가라 부가 마이. 남기도 남시 주장 다 마이 세가 남바시가다 대다 된 다제리 전에 가라 다 마이 바이 시 지엄다 아니 랑기 류지 차셰 상감 루바소에 차이 차양 다드만 소지다 그다 합주 주사야 이마다 대화 연구도야
So
그거 다니면 주샤잖아 조금 말해 是吧 여기 어디 자다 소신 다 많이 있으더라 송아 다니 루바 참 많이 세대가 다니 루바 참 많이 세가 다디 마제가나 다니 루바 참 많이 세가는 다 기움 다 아디 랑그 류지 상금 루바소 사위 차양 테마이 다 잡아서 님들 주도와 테마이 충감차 이니 가서 남이 밖에 마이라 추세단에 나자 미세대 나이가라다 충감기 차소 취감 차소 시위 차양 안에 다 마이바大家们，大家社会上区上哪当、下当、五当，大都嘛就才就说，是不是就是这样？
So now then, so how is it that this relationship between the I or the self, the individual or the person, and its basis of designation, how does that work? Here then, it appears to us as if the I, the self, or the person is arising out of its basis of designation, the collection of the aggregates. When the collection of the aggregates is in a certain kind of configuration and complete, then we think that's a person, that's a self, that's an I, that's an individual, and it appears that appearance is as if it is coming out from the sort of object side, the basis of designation itself, as if that's arising out of that. But that appearance is actually erroneous because, in fact, we mentally construct the notion of I, self, person, individual, and then we ascribe that to the basis of designation. So rather than it coming out of the basis of designation, it's actually something that we impose upon it or place upon it. Now, in the case of, this is an accurate or correct ascription of identity because the basis of designation is suitable to be identified in that way, but the way in which we do it, where we think that we're sort of the identity is coming out of the basis of designation, that's a mistake, that's an error. So that's what's being discussed here is the relationship between the I or the self or the person, the individual, and its basis of designation, and to show how it is that these various forms of names that we use to identify ourselves and other persons are actually mere names that are mentally constructed and then ascribed to the things that they designate. So this is what's given in the next section of the auto commentary, and that's in page 93 of the Tibetan. And it says, thus, if one examines it in that way, then the individual or the person or the I, the way that if there was an I or a person or an individual, which those identities or those designations, which existed as they appear, then if there were such a thing, then it seems to us as if they would have to be real. That is, that they would have to exist in the way that they appear, as though they're findable within the object, the basis of designation upon which they're designated. And however, even though it seems to us like it has to be that way, as if they're really existing out there in the object that we're identifying, then that such an individual and so forth doesn't exist at all in the way that it appears. And here it says that, and then it goes into the analysis of this, showing how the individual or the I or the self doesn't exist in the way it appears. So here it says that if we look at the individual, the body and the mind of the person, body-mind is sort of shorthand for the 5 aggregates, because the physical aggregate subsumes most of the body components, and then the rest of it is mostly mental in nature. And so body-mind together, and if we look at them collectively or individually, then that person is not that. It's not its basis of designation. It's an identity that's ascribed to it. So, and then it's also not the case that individual is the collection of the two, the body, mind, together. And it's also not the case that the individual is any of the individual 6 constituents or components that make up the basis of designation of a person. And likewise, it's not some collection, a mere collection of the 6 components that make up a person or an individual is also not the person. And also, there's no person at all or individual at all, which is other than those 6 constituents. So here, what's that saying is that the person or individual, which is identified based upon that basis of designation, is neither identical with its basis of designation, absolutely identical with its basis of designation, nor is it absolutely separate from the basis of designation. And so it shows here why that's the case. And so the commentary continues to say that here it says, then the next part of the, to show this, illustrate this, it quotes a passage from the Ratnavali, the precious garland of the protector, the unexcelled protector Nagarjuna, where it says, the individual is not earth, is not water, is not fire, is not wind, is not space, is not consciousness. And since it's not all of them together, where could there be some individual which is apart from that? So to explain that, this is also explained in the same thing is said in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Lord Shantideva, where it says that the teeth, hair, and nails are not the self. The self is not bones, blood, is not blood and bones, is not mucus, phlegm, lymph, pus, fat, sweat, lungs, liver are also not the self. The internal organs are not the self. The self is not excrement or urine. It's not warmth. It's not wind. It's not the orifices. And so it's also not the 6 forms of consciousness that exist within us, is not the self. So all of that is to say that this individual or self or I is not, here in the commentary it enumerates the different categories. There are solid things like here it says bones, etc., which are solid. There's blood, which is the water element, liquid, and it's not the self. And then from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, there's warmth, fire element, which exists within the body. That's not the self. It's not the wind element that flows through the channels within the body. Is not the individual or self. It's not the holes that are in the body, such as the orifices and so forth. Those are not the individual. And then so forth with these 6 forms of consciousness, visual awareness and so forth. Those are not the self.
아니 요 마이바 충검 차서 12 차양 다 마인 봐. 지원의 강대지 파리지 명감 처지 차양 다 마인 봐. 류지 룽감 짜나는 규위 아니 양식 요와양 아니 지우 마인 봐. 어디가 사감 충감 명감 체제. 다 류지 코동 그 부관한 제 지우 마인 봐. 되게 아니 나가 부가면 나 미리 나봐 시와서 남시 탐제장 다 마인 봐. 다장 아니 남시 대다 마인 봐. 남시 소바양 아니 다랑 마인 봐. 나양 아니 대다 소바 마인 봐. 이장 당 저게 대례시에 주강 세가나 삼미 삼마인 추마인 매마인 룽마인 난가마인 다 대마인나 아니 다 다시 레마인 다시 초비 진도가 마인나 아니 다 지고 가와요아래 세나 대례시에 주강 세가나 다 다시 초비 진도 민장 다요 잠도 요요 인상 샤고야 인상 대례시에 주강 세다 여기 가서 류지 양단이도 민세지와도 티고도 되면서 고마서 저 감주 뒤위칠 류지실이 류지 간 대신 감리를 가서 류지 양단이도 다 되는 거지 어디 양단 좀 인도 민세가라 감주 주발을 감주 초발을 때에 따와 인상 아니 양다바 초와라 신지 초바 말에 다오나 가와래서나 감주 아니 초비 띵도 민간 다여점도 요아래 세네 수야이지리다.
So here then, in that portion of the commentary, it goes through all of the elements that make up the body, the body of the person. So there's the elements, the liquid elements, such as that have the character of the water element, of blood, etc. Those are not, all of those parts of that are not the self. And then likewise the warmth that pervades the body from the top of the head down to the bottom of the feet. That fire element is not the self. And then the wind which flows within the channels within the body, which is light and motile, has motility, moves about, is not the individual. And then the holes that are in the body, empty spaces, which are the space element within the body, those are also not the individual. And then likewise the visual awareness and the other forms of awareness, auditory awareness and so forth, including the intellect or mental awareness, all of those are not the self. And since the self is not those, is not the self, and the self, those are not the self, and the self is not those things. And also the collection of those is not the I, and the I, I'm sorry, the collection of those is not the I, and the I is also not the collection of those. And if that's the case, then how could those things, how could the I exist apart from those that collection or those elements that make up an individual, the physical elements as well as the element of the mind or mental element? So what this all goes to show then is that the I or self or person is simply designated based upon that collection of the elements. And it's not findable within that collection of the elements. It's not findable in the sense of being one of the individual elements. It's not the collection of the elements in total. Rather, it's a mere name. It's merely designatedly existent, meaning its existence depends upon designation for it to occur, and that entails then that it's not identical with the collection of the elements, nor is it absolutely separate from the collection of the elements. Rather, it's just a mere name which is designated upon that basis of designation.
Oh yeah. Okay. Teleshanam jiu teleshanam shana hang sega teleshana jiu kang setting bari 공법이 교 냠도 심비 아니 로라 나와다지 아니 로라 나와다지 교도 매베지 교 매바지 간다 라완도 나와라 라시지 투엄 나와다지 교도 매베시 노래자 수다마이 다 다시 풍부가 초반 풍부가 이나니 풍부를 왔다 마이 봐 수다 마이 봐 초다 마이 봐 두시다 마이 봐 두시다 마이 봐 나바시와다 마이 봐 세가라 풍부 초반야 아니 가사 마이 봐 안테나 공법이 풍부하다 감주 레레와당 초바다 초비 입소 강야 공법이 교 마이 다디기 되나라 가서래 남자 나바 뒤우기나네 세주와로 어디나 신천에서 자유지 권비자 마이데 가디이나 아니 다시 강사 다시 풍보당 다주 강사 랑자 풍보당 레바보 강사 연라 아니 풍보당 연라 제 강사 남 오지레스 오지바 인상 아니 라완도 주고 오지이나 가서래 얘게 공법이 교라 나와 다르지 아니 근데 인소나 아니 라완도 주비 지기 오지도 이나 아니 다 풍부 다시 간가 지도 교하게 담마게 와라 되게 아니 가제 풍부 다이나 재단 집안이도 지루 세게 안 다다 풍부는 오지 바를 견당是吧原来在那制度出行아니 근데 지도 교회나 아니 지도 교회가나 아니 풍봉아 다 지 나양아였고 나양아고 되게 교회장 가대 풍보다나 대체질 마음에 다자 마와 주루세기다 나만부터 위견이 주그래
So thus, that being the case, then that the I or self or individual person is simply ascribed, is an identity or name which is only designatedly existent, meaning existing because of the process of designation. And it's ascribed to its basis of designation as an identity, but it doesn't exist from the side of the basis of designation in any way whatsoever. It's not findable within the collection of the basis of designation, nor the individual parts of the basis of designation. So that being the case, then here it says that when we have this thought that I am the individual which is meditating, when one thinks I am the individual which is meditating, the way that appears to us, ordinary persons, is as if that existed with a kind of autonomous character. It existed as if the I or the person who's doing the meditation here has some kind of autonomous character, that it's not dependent upon things apart from itself. And here, that sort of, the way that appears to the mind, there is no such person, such individual as that in any way whatsoever. And that being the case, then it's explained from a sutra here that the physical aggregate is not the self. The aggregate of sensation is not the self. The aggregate of ideation is not the self. The aggregate of activity is not the self. And consciousness is not the self. So what that is saying is that the individual aggregates, as well as the collection of the aggregates, is not the self, because it's those five aggregates collected together are the basis for the designation of a self or an I, person, individual. But they themselves, as basis of designation, cannot be the individual, person, I, self, etc. Because if they were, either individually or collectively, if the aggregates, either individually or collectively, were the person or the I, or etc., then you would have the problem of the thing which is designated and its basis of designation collapsing together and being identical. And that would lead to all kinds of different irreconcilable faults, problems that could not be eliminated, such that, this will be explained later as we go along. Here it says in the commentary that That being the case, the 5 aggregates of the individual who is meditating, as well as the individual 6 elements or components that make up a person, the basis of designation of a person, the collection of those, some kind of configuration of that collection is not the individual who is meditating. If they were, either individually or collectively, the individual who is meditating, then the basis of designation and the property that is designated to it, that means here the identity or the name, I, person, self, etc., would be identical. And same thing with the person as functioning as the appropriator of the aggregates. The person is that which takes up the aggregates, and that which is taken up is the aggregates. Those two would be identical. And then similarly, the different parts, the different components of the 5 aggregates or the 6 elements, as well as that which possesses those components, meaning the person or I or self, would become identical. And if that's not acceptable. And this is explained likewise in the Ratnavali, the Precious Garland of Master Nagarjuna, where it says, if the aggregates were the self, then because there are many aggregates, the self also would have to become multiple. There would have to be many selves. Instead of just one person or I or self, you would end up having multiple selves or persons. And so these faults and others would obtain.
Oh, yeah. That's one that you can sorry. That's it, you're not getting when 대인아 다 풍부 다이나 아니 가서래 지도 주의 전에 당에 버려와라 아니 다음부터 와 그때 마투다니 아니 풍부 지지 쳐봐 신도 다야 지지 쳐봐 되게 된다 오라 뭐 저거지 들어와나라 다 되니 뒤나라 쳐버나 봐셔와 기우이나스 아니 감주고 나셔게 남바셔와디 기우에 봐이나 아니 기우 나와티나 남바셔와 나와기 된다 아니 기우 응하매와티나 남바셔와 그 마마이 타마다 기우 통하나 남바셔와 통하다 아니 기우라 아니 붙잡아 손지 가나 남바셔와 붙잡아서 아니 통고 요거서 메대징 기우 직장 남시出달이 기우出도 주와당 다 지구出도 주와당 남시 주요와 이상 요지다 남시 주도 주와당 야나 지구 지 나시 제가 남시양 참에 지도 줘야기 다 대대기 남시 나이나 견디와레스
So then, particularly if we single out consciousness within the aggregates or the elements which compose the basis of designation of a person, if the individual was consciousness, if that was the case, then when the individual got sick, the consciousness would be sick. When the individual spoke, then the consciousness would speak. When the individual heard something, then the consciousness would hear. And when the individual produced children, then the consciousness would produce children. And all of these are unacceptable, they're unviable. And similarly, because the individual is a single So although the individual is a single thing, an individual is a single thing, and if it was similar to consciousness, of which there are six forms, the visual, auditory, etc., then the individual would become 6. There would be 6 individuals. Or on the other hand, if the individual being singular, then all of the consciousnesses would be indistinguishable. They would all be exactly the same. All 6 of them would have the same exact characteristics.
Oh yeah, 그게 대체 다 초바당 입 아니 가서 우리 감주 뒤비 아니 초비 입대 입초 아니 가에서는 입대 되네 다 기울해서나 봐. 초반 뒤비 입대 아니 입생한테 입신한테首先来有去现在对大的解决机制在那的我去입생한테首先了嘛都要买的입생한테 입생是吧입생한테首先的效果的是초비 입业务是이나 아니 남시 초바지 기후 이나 안에 뒤 수전도 초바지 수전도 규회 아니 수전도 규바 인상 안에 수면 가는 안에 가면 기후 매가 타와 그녀와 입수전도 연구를 될까나 아니 수전도 규회 수면 가는에 기후 매바 규로 다 풍봉안에 현도양 기후 매대 아니 풍봉안에 현도 규회나 다 라시지 주위 때문에 풍봉안에 现在呢，这没天线用过的是，这没天线因呢，他让先去注意这没，让先去出发了，这没因呗，碰不对象就准备，俺你参与的没点把做的是，是吧？碰不对象因把准备参与的没点把做的是，
So here then, one might think that the shape of the aggregates is the individual. But if that was the case, then since shape is necessarily a property of physical things, then there would be no individual in the non-physical realms. And that's one problem there. And then likewise, if the there's no person which exists other or apart from the 5 aggregates. And the reason for this is here, this is specified with respect to if the person exists autonomously, or the individual exists autonomously or objectively from its own side, or having its own intrinsic nature, then such a person, there's no such individual which is apart from the 5 aggregates. If there was such, then because it would be a kind of the otherness, or the otherness that separates the individual and the aggregates would be such that it would be established by means of its own intrinsic nature, it kind of, and thus would have no relationship whatsoever, then the 풍부 뒤치에서 좀 배치니 당면 담박길때 랑신기 두비 점에 신인배
랑신기 두비 타달라 점에 신인 그래 아니 좀 대인제 가나 아니 풍부 뒤치에서 좀 천이다 미담바 주그래 미담바 주와데 다데 자와시라 가데 풍부 남나 시 아니 풍부 천이면 봐 주르
So if the individual was other than the 5 aggregates, and here other is being used in the sense of an other which is the 2 existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, then they would be an other such that they would be others such that they have a kind of lack of relationship which is established by means of intrinsic nature. And if that was the case, then the person or individual would not possess the characteristic which defines something as being created. That is, the aggregates are created things. They're produced by causes and conditions, and then the person would be, or the individual would not possess that characteristic or those defining features which define something as being created.
가지 천나 라시 유준아 치다나 그 천나 안에 라시 지주바요나 저와 년도 제베 대천 줄으세 아니 좀 된대다 년도 군디다 제와 그 태천바 주시 태수 천나 양한 대 민주르세 가나다 태수세는 뒤 탐제도 여봐 수이제 치마 친미 뒤서 따바따비 되는 아망아미던데 태수 그 뒤에 치마 친미 뒤서 내생님 보래 소나 진짜니 아니 뒤 탐제도 아니 양알은 대교 말에 라시지 주와라 아니 규제지 계속 매봐 아니 반자 뻥와다 아니 뭐 컴퓨터 주와 매주와 인자 아니 자와 양알은 대와 아니 주주천은 양알 대 매주 캐는 남면 주와당 차 매주 아니 캐와는 남 뒤에 남수야 딘지 그 주와다 차와지 많이 미스고래서 용용 두고 말했어.
So here then, this is just, the point just made that if the individual or self or I was absolutely other than or distinct from the aggregates, then problems would arise such that here it says in the basic wisdom of Master Nagarjuna that if the individual or person or self were other than the aggregates, then the person or self would not would be without any of the characteristics of the aggregates, or would not have the same kind of defining qualities that the aggregates possess, because the two would be intrinsically other than each other and separate from each other, and have that otherness would be intrinsic to each of them. Therefore, they couldn't share any properties in common, such as being created by causes and conditions, which is the defining characteristic of the aggregates. So then here it says that it also quotes a sutra, which is given the title of the exertion of an elephant. And that sutra says that if phenomena possessed intrinsic nature, then the victors, the victorious Buddhas, together with the arhats, would know that. And then those phenomena would be immutable. Here the term means immutable, meaning never changing, and also beginningless. That is, they would be in that the same state that they exist in at one point in time. They would always exist in that state without any beginning and also without any end. They would be beginninglessly and endlessly immutable. And phenomena which have that kind of immutability could not go to nirvana, could not become extinct. Meaning, and this is referring particularly to the phenomena on the side of mental affliction, the mental afflictions and so forth. If they possessed intrinsic nature, then they'd be immutable, and there could be no nirvana. That is, because the mental afflictions would be immutable, there'd be no way to get rid of them. And then the verse here concludes by saying, also the wise persons would never be free from mental elaborations. Here, mental elaborations refers particularly to the misapprehension of things as being real.
Oh yeah, that dig. Randi tipat shachani. That dig drawatila marches and that is sat roadwatini. Oh, Tamu Gombeta to la Randi to Gumzu, the Sendi Gumzu. Yana Semla Tazutan, Dona Kanshala Tazu, that's the subject Jedani Shaktu. That Tambola, Tajuna Shin Chenim, Pavalu Rijitu, do Sami Chumayin, Memelumino. Naga Menashe Mayu women at Telesene, Jew Kangs. Jew come to Duichi, Yanda me, Duichi, Yanda Mai. Yana come the Duichi, Yanda Mai Senatore. Come to Duichi, Yanda, come Rea Duichina, Yanda Mai. Teaching come the Rea Duichi, Yanda New means, Senor. Your Siesung. Then Luduji Regition one did a sumbi, Juni, Kansa, Randang, Ani, Randang, Tenny, some million Namshi Paji, that rank come to Chasher Watans. Gumi is gonna, I rank come to Toba de Toba Tadawatang. Ania, Toba de la Ngaji Gigi Toba Yorwa, Ngaji Gigi Toba Kaya, ane te mayin pasunga kam jimba soba kanya rani tu joba kane dani ngam da tu joba de kane tele shene ju kang xewe ane rani ane kam tada le ngo tada tu ya miriba tene rowa ngo tada tu mayin ba ngo meba tene meba temba tar ngo tada tu ya miriba temba tar 다 냠샤기 내가 주 안에 다음에 권배 권도야 냠샤기 나가 저 다음에 권에 다 냠샤기 랑데 아니 제도 그 내가서 주라니 컨트롤 되는 단에 다바 잠지 다이도 찾을 때 말해 그러봐 냠샤기 내가서 다음에 밑에 권한이라 냠바 샤바 이장 민간 다이도 잠지네 수팀 또 미토와체 그러봐 다 냠샤네 아니 제도라 랑유잖아 아니 다유 잠지 조투디 아니 다 쳐주지 때 말이에서 그라 매일 받던 받다를 냠샤도 다음에 권배 로 제도도 교라니 감주 되어라 때네 따와 잠지 아니 다유도 쳐줄 때 미칠 교 감주 되어지 안다 많이 예송 야
So that's a discussion from the auto commentary, and now this leads into the transcript commentary, the sub commentary, and to the second a subdivision of the text where it says that the way in which one establishes that things are merely exist as designations. Designatedly existent by meditating upon selflessness, and that has two subdivisions. One way in which one meditates this within oneself or based upon oneself, and then the way in which one applies that to other things, and then another way is to do it is to view the mind. And the fourth subdivision here is, in brief, the way in which to view whatever arises. So this is the first topic, the way in which one meditates with respect to the self. That is, what is being meditated here is how to establish things as being merely designatedly existent, or one could translate that also as nominally existent. Things are merely nominally existent or are designatedly existent. So here the first of these, again, is the quotation from the root text, verses 30 and the first half of 31, where it says that the Arya Nagarjuna, the great protector, has said that the individual is not earth, is not water, is not fire, is not wind, is not space, is not consciousness. And since it's not all of them, how could there be an individual which is other than those? Because the individual is not real, because the six elements are collections. That is, the collections, the collection here means the elements individually are collections of things. That is, each of the components that makes up the person, the earth element, the water element, and so forth, all of those individually are collections of different parts and so forth. And then likewise, all of them together are a collection. So therefore, those six elements cannot be the real or actual person. And so here, this is explained, the sub-commentary explains that here, with respect to that, Master Nagarjuna in the Precious Garland has taught it that way, that the individual, that here the individual can refer to oneself, oneself as a person, that I or self or person is not water, not earth, and also all the way up to not consciousnness. It's not any of the individual parts of the six elements that make up oneself as the collection that are the basis of designation for oneself. And since they're not all of them together, then this when it comes to this present collection of the elements, the whole collection together that is present for oneself, and then also the past and future stream of that collection is not suitable to be established as oneself. That is, it's not suitable to be established as the I or the self, referring to oneself. And this is at the top of page 216 in the Tibetan commentary. And so having rejected that, it says that how could the individual be other than that collection? How could it possibly exist? And so then it shows that since having shown that it's illogical or incorrect for oneself to have a character which is distinct from those 6 elements, then once one understands that, has understood that, then one meditates within meditative absorption on selflessness. One cultivates selflessness within meditative absorption. And then, however, what is happening during meditative absorption on selflessness is that one is absorbed in concentration upon a mere negation, not on the conventionally existing I or the basis of designation of the I or so forth. One is those phenomenal things are not appearing within that meditative concentration. So that being the case, in meditative absorption, there's no way to establish the way in which the I and its basis of designation exist in relationship to one another. So then coming out of that meditative absorption and the post-meditative state, then when it appears, or what is taught next is how it is that the individual, that's oneself here, appears as merely nominally existent or merely designatedly existent through it's merely something which is designated in dependence upon the collection of the 6 elements.
Oh yeah, that ne le tambo wa da dra wa thoma ane khade sungure yesana naga come true jang ane 네 나가 감투장 안에 다시 감부 주보 대장 다시 리심이 있었지. 그러나 리다스미 수트이신. 리심이고 대장 안에 가서래 리심이고야 다시 풍부 뒤에 심지 남바시 풍부당 안에 리드 수지 풍부마 뒤에 있잖아. 야 이보야 다시 풍부 뒤에 다분이 다다다 풍부니 어때? 아니 라시지 집에 지단 타대지 따바시 단 내가 내시 제박가 나네 아니 데비 지장의 내다 데비 투장의 내시 연구하러 되게 전다지 마 일단 연구하래 에 다분이 어디 아니 라시지 집에 지단 타대지 따바차데 에 라시지 집에 지단 타대 따바 담바 투나 딘주 지단 투마 가론래 예 매바 예 매배 질 연나 지단 투마 가루도 역가 인장 아니 된도 담바 투바 이나양 아니 된도 지단 투마 가루래 예 매바 예 매배 된도 지단 타다 가루라 된도 지 뒤유 셰차라 뒤유 된도 지 뒤유 셰차라 디 팅이 가루 많이 비다지 된도기 뒤유 지단 타다 가루 많이 비시 아니 담바 투바 아니 까기와 인장 다수거반 많이 비시 다수거바데 다들라 안 뒤우 마미 바만 제다 마미 비다스 다 시고아레 스타트 텔레 제다 켐도야
So here then what this is showing then is just as what Master Nagarjuna had said, that the person is not real because the elements, the 6 elements, are collections individually and in total as well. So that explains that. So here then, as far as beginners such as myself, at the very beginning, initially, one can take the elements here, the inner 6 elements. That refers to the inner 6 elements is reference to the elements, not talking about external objects, but the inner 6 elements, meaning the components that make up as a collection, make up the basis for a designation of the I or the person. And those can be, they make up the basis of designation of the person. And those can be subsumed under 2 categories, the body and the mind. That is the physical aggregate, or the first 5 of these 6 elements are primarily related to the body, and then the latter, most of the other 4 aggregates, and the last of the 6. I'm sorry, the last 4 of the 5 aggregates, and the last of the 6 elements primarily is dealing with mind. So in any case, the aggregates or the elements here can be subsumed into 2 categories, body and mind. And both of those, those 2 together make, when they're collected together in a group, or to a collection, then they form the basis of designation. And here then, when that being the case, if the self and the aggregates, those 2, were one has to investigate how they exist. Or if they existed intrinsically, that is, the self existed intrinsically, and the aggregates, which are the basis of designation, existed intrinsically, then if either of them or both of them exist intrinsically, then the relationship between the 2 would have to be such that they would be intrinsically identical or intrinsically different. And this is the case because if something is established as real, that is existing the way it appears to ordinary persons who falsely ascribe intrinsic existence to it, then if something is real in that way, then there's no other alternative than there being either intrinsically really singular, or really different, really identical or really different. And then this fact, or what would happen, is that things would be intrinsically or really singular or different, is given the title of, or the name that the way in which these 2 things are related as objects, having that character of being real. And with respect to that here, so here then, when one's doing this analysis, investigating the relationship between the self and the aggregates, and is operating under the assumption that they're intrinsically existent, then they either have to be identical, intrinsically identical, or intrinsically different. And the reason that one places in this context to show that they can't be that way is that the 2, the self and the aggregates, the reason that one gives in this context when one is presenting a syllogism to establish this is that they can't, neither of those possibilities is viable. They can't be either of those. And that kind of reason, which is used in this context of this argument, or this syllogism, is that it's called a reason of not observing the object that is related. So here, that's a technical term for this kind of relation between the aggregates and the self. One doesn't observe within them the kind of relationship that they would necessarily have to have if they were established by means of their own intrinsic nature. Again, being that if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature, they'd either have to be intrinsically singular, or they'd have to be intrinsically different, separate from each other. And so, since that's not observed, if you don't observe one of them possessing that kind of quality, then the other one, which is related to it, would also not be able. It could not exist.
Oh yeah, oh the ma, 鸡蛋太太都的，上面他提起了，但那些的把的用过的，家乡的云呢，俺台湾的云呢，对没鸡蛋的云呢，土壤的云呢，是那些的把用过的，大家真的的家乡的云呢的送给啥人上过都的，然后看着这是呢，俺呢，哦，他把国满南的当俺那些。当你工作给那些，哎，当我们那些，哎，让给人话的讲的光贵呗，哎，他到人家了，可能啊让出去那我马多是，但是让出去谁的，让咱去做人家的，让出去那我马多没呗，他推就告诉让心去这边几个他的谁的，马了我去，马多让心些我给他呢，苏巴托呢。大部分我的让西的就鸡蛋太太没人把，大部分我的哪路大起鸡蛋太太看人大呢？那些书把啦偏吃的我送过他，说那些书把啦偏吃呗。他嘛他的让啦，那没的我多的，我说的我多的，我多，我娘把个罗老说话。我没被缺陷的没吧，我没被缺陷的没这吧，然后呢，有的呢吃了的，我吃住的，让个落雨呢怕没多花钱，当不得，
So here then, if we apply this in the if we do this in the way that sorry, let me start over. Since it's a case that one has to meditate upon this by putting it together in accordance with the way it's been explained properly by those who have experience of it, we can discuss it in the following fashion. Right now for us, that which appears to us appears as if it existed by means of its own intrinsic identity. That is, our current experience is completely permeated by this appearance of things as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature or had their some kind of intrinsic identity, which is not merely established by the force of through being mentally constructed and designated as such by thought. So we don't have any of that. So apart from that kind of appearance of things as possessing intrinsic identity, we don't. Nothing appears to us at all. And so here then, on the occasion of doing the meditation practice, one doesn't during the actual period of lagen tungi kapla nyamshaki kap tungi kap. So during the time, the period of the when one's doing the meditative absorption on the view here, then one's not utilizing conventions such as intrinsic nature. Those are not relevant to that meditation process, and then. Tungi kapsu
tungi kapsu rangxin xewi tanda jidang rangxin ji zhubi jidang tatai chani ane labgu yorwa yinza rangxin xewi jidang tanya xe rangxin xewa de tanya to pa to ne dabu ni wo de nanglu da ji jidang tatai kanyin stana ane jidang tatai kanto chumma toku neche supala ane penche kare song.
So here then, what is being said is that when one's doing the meditation practice one is doing here, then one doesn't initially at the beginning does not employ conventions like intrinsic existence. One doesn't apply such conventions to what's being observed. Rather, one simply investigates and analyzes how it is that the self and the aggregates, those two, how they appear, and whether or not the way they appear is, do they appear to be identical or do they appear to be different? And then when one is doing that examination, then one attempts to nuche zukpa.
Niche supa la, niche de pa jupa la, niche supa san, niche jupa.
Nuche karedo zukure.
다다 풍부히 찍이나 안에다 보면 뭐 찍도시나 타대대미 찍도 줘야 그네 줘야 알아. 어디 가자 고바 그네 봐.
So then what one does then with that kind of investigation of the relationship between the self and the aggregates is one examines whether they exist as the way they appear to us. Do they appear to be identical or do they appear separately? And then to that appearance, which is the appearance of the object of negation here, then one applies analysis which would negate the way in which they're appearing to us in that form of the object of negation. And so that's very beneficial to us as at the initial point of doing this. And then 데라 토망
다 토마 그래서나 라라 다다나 미징아 오도 나선나디 가자 그가나데 나냠비 나오냠바그 로라 나마이 비치 현다 마드바 아니 나테야 아니 코라랑고 뭐네 유딩도 차라 라와 유딩네 차라바테 나데 라완도 주밤 아내랑 신지 주바 아랑은에 주바 유딩네 차라바테 아내랑 이지 유도 차주디 이지 일에 차주디 이네 마도와 체체네 로라 망내와 체 되네 람상 텐더비 나디 요아 마레데 람상 메시체는 유도 고미에서 당아디 차주디 싸워지 고고와 인다 싸워 차장데 다 원마송 거래.
So here then at the beginning, when one first starts doing this, one should try to bring up within oneself the appearance of the I, in the sense that it appears, and when one tries to bring this forth, such that without investigating it initially and trying to determine how it exists, one simply tries to produce the sense of the I, which is sort of naturally occurring for us. And when one does this such that this I is the genuine or authentic form of the I, which appears continuously for us in ordinary kind of experience. And so then when one does that, one should have it such that the cognition of that I, when one is thinking I, that thought and is solely focused on the I, without mixing it together with any other phenomenon which is not the I, and try to get it so that I appears from its own side. Such that it is appearing very vividly, sort of as an object in front of us, but very, very clear and appearing just in a sort of solitary, isolated fashion, such that the I appears, the I which we sort of ordinarily sort of take for granted and experience in our everyday lives, but here we're trying to isolate it and see how it appears when one strips away all of the other phenomena that are not the I, and have it appear in that very, very vivid way. And then once you get that appearance of the I, here we're trying to delineate the object of negation. So we're trying to first get a vivid appearance of the I as it appears falsely as the object of negation. So one is not analyzing the status of that I initially, but is rather trying to get it to appear as the object of negation. And so once one does that, then once one gets that within one's mind, one shouldn't sort of cast it aside and say that doesn't exist. One should not quickly negate it in that way.
Oh yeah, that didn't cause already. Ramon ngate, gacha ngate chatu de sawa yong tunda la. Anita, de la sundiga lodan tawa, peche shanla yu, lodan tawa da, shangama so da kanje, tindi tuizu machena, rang la, rangi chawa, tawa chawa yabuji, yabushi chawi gana, ane rang la chawa di chawa la tene, ane gawa jidi gana. ngay ane chawa dindi ji chawa de pepim siwa yabu chungsha nangi kangi ane nga chazu di kala nga di shen la yang shen kang la yang ma dobi rang wa chaya jikdang yang di shen rang la mi chigi ane kaso de gyun chenpochi mi seba la sowa ki ane gyun chenpochi zuwi kato de la nga la dindi pe gyun di dal chawa dindi ya yenya chi ma jum chi jum ma jum di ane gyun dida zuwa di nga nyamba ki ane nga di chazu di shen da minra shi yungwa yinpa ta di sungwa di nala sunga di la sunga di solang yabu chungna sundu ta di moga cherwa o dini kamla ane di ngay che nyamso chawa lepo ina ya ngay che chawa duba ina ya ranga macha wala ane chawa se chawa yabu la che kan di ngay che nyamdo ta rangi chawa tang chepapo ni ane jarne samna ane nga de shenla yang mitubi rang wa chatu ngoto de ane bari sawo chagres.
So here then the way we can do this is we can do it using sort of examples from our own experience. So in one case we can think of, when you think back something that you did in the past. It could be a year ago or months ago or even the previous day, something that you did which was especially good. So you did something that was really wonderful, fantastic, and you accomplished it, and you felt really great about having done that. So that's one example. Then another way of doing this same thing, what we're doing is trying to bring forth a very vivid and intense sense of I. And so another way to do this is to think of when someone wrongly accused you of having done something very bad, and the sense of ego or I that arose in that context where someone said you did that and in fact you didn't do it, and then you think, no, I didn't do that. So the way the I appeared or the ego appeared to you in that context. So here in either case, you think, I did that. I really did something great. How does the I, when you reflect back on that, you remember that experience that you had, how did the I appear to you in that experience, that when you made that major accomplishment? It seems like the I is very, very powerful, strong, appearing to you in that way. Or on the other hand, when somebody falsely accused you of having done something that you actually didn't do, said you were a bad person, you stole my property or something like that, then the I in that case too will appear very, very vividly. And so what one has to do in that case is think that the activity that occurred as well as the agent that performed it, though you think those are kind of combined together. That is the activity that was performed in the sense of you accomplished something, or the agent, you as the agent that performed it, or you as the person who didn't do that which somebody falsely ascribed to you. If you bring those together and you then really focus on the I, part of that, not the activity as such or what happened, the context for it, but merely the sense of I or ego that appears in that context, then you'll arrive at the actual genuine sense of I that is the object to be investigated and eventually negated here.
That's right. Oh, they, I need that kind of story. chawata cheba boni chane samna ngato ngade ane gachi ngade ngato yin nyamba yongures ane te ngadela chung mu tendawe ngadela tsuri chung mu tsuri chung mu junda para che maje sewa tamje ane tandadi gachi nga chatu dela gachi nga chatu ane 얘가 차두기 나한테라 딜라 총마준다 네 마체 마제 kho나 두베 아니 가정아지 예 타저래 양박 가정아한테 차야 가대로 와한테 인도 가정아한테.
So here then, what one is doing is thinking about, I did that, or I didn't do that. I really, in the positive sense, I accomplished that. Or I didn't do that. That person said I stole something. I didn't really do it. In both cases, one is bringing up this sense of I, and one is attempting to bring it up. And here, this is the actual object of negation, the sense of the I, which is exaggerated so that it appears as if it possesses intrinsic existence. And so when one is able to bring this up in that way, then the existence of this I, and one determines it very precisely there, then one has determined actually the I, one has delineated or found the actual I, which is the object of negation.
다다 남미지 풍부 지장바양 네 풍부 디시 안에 다다라라 랑글로라 남미지 풍부 지장바테 하사 때문에 아니 대당 안에 또발라 나누다를 지단 타다 가루 인거와 지단 또발라 나나 안 지단 타다 가루 인거와 아니 람산 탕마체바 뉴도 탕마체바 전에 아니 대다 거와 라르 얘는 니도 다 거와데 라르 대자 신유소 대다 거와데 라르 대자 신유소 냠네 이때바나 다 풍보디니 풍보 코란당 나루다지 찍두두 와 풍보데 라라 나루다지 풍보다 찍두 여바세 풍보라 소위 최 탐제 라라 나주지 풍보당 아나 나루다지 타데도 여바데 라라 마차라체
풍부 그랑당 나루타기 찍두두
얘나 풍보디 시 다다 남미지 풍보 지장바데 그 로라 사담 사담네 아니 디당 또발라 나루다르세 또발라 나루다 지다 타데 가루도 내와 나거와 인거와양 아니 니도 탕마체바 랑기 사노 타치마체바 대다 괴와데 나랑도 수이나 시그레스 냠네 아니 이때바나 풍보되니 풍보 코란다 나루다지 찍두두 풍발라 소와 최신 풍보되다 나루 타데도 어때 군전도 전에 아니 다 오라마산도.
So here then, when you do that as well, so once one is determined, one has properly delineated the existence of this I, the I which appears in those situations of accomplishment or false accusation. Then once one has done that, then one examines, one has to create a kind of clear visualization or of a visualization of the mere generality of one's own aggregates, which are appearing to 단단 낭무기 랑기 풍부 치참 잠병 살답네 단단 낭무기 랑기 풍부 치참바
단도 샤시다 수지신 자샤 지존리시니데 산예신도 메데부 조근난다 신라제바 Guru Ranam